Imagine an empire that ruled nearly a quarter of the world, armed with soldiers, weapons, and absolute authority on. Then imagine that empire being challenged by a thin, simply dressed man who carried no gun, commanded no army, and yet refused to bow. This man did not shout orders or declare war. He walked. He fasted. He spoke the truth, even when it meant prison or death. What made millions follow him? How did silence become louder than bullets, and peace more powerful than violence? This is not just a story of protests and politics. It is the story of how one human being proved that moral courage can shake the strongest foundations of power. Mahatma Gandhi was not born a hero, nor was he destined to become one. He was a shy child from a small coastal town in India, an average student who struggled with confidence and fear. Yet history would remember him as the man who led India to freedom and inspired the world without lifting a weapon. At a time when oppression was answered with bloodshed, Gandhi chose a different path, one built on truth, self-discipline, and none. This documentary explores how an ordinary man transformed his weaknesses into strength, awakened a nation under colonial rule, and left behind a legacy that continues to guide movements for justice, equality, and human dignity across the world. Gandhi's early life gives no sign of the giant he would one day become. Born in 1869 in the small coastal town of Porbandar, India, Mohandas Karamchand, Gandhi was a quiet, timid child who often struggled with self-confidence. He was deeply influenced by his mother's strong moral values, especially her emphasis on honesty, self-discipline, and compassion. As a student, Gandhi was average and painfully shy, avoiding attention and doubting his own abilities. There was nothing extraordinary about him, except an inner sensitivity to right and wrong that slowly took root. In his late teens, he traveled to London to study law, a journey that exposed him to new cultures, ideas, and ways of thinking. Life in England was not easy. Gandhi experimented with food, clothing, and beliefs, searching for his identity while trying to balance Western education with Eastern values. After qualifying as a lawyer, he returned to India, hoping for success, but failure followed him instead. He struggled in court, unable to speak confidently, and soon realized that legal practice in India was not meant for him. This period of disappointment shaped his humility and patience, teaching him that growth often begins with failure. Seeking opportunity, Gandhi accepted a legal assignment in South Africa in 1893, unaware that this decision would redefine his life. At this stage, he was still an ordinary man, uncertain and hesitant, but deeply reflective. These early years laid the foundation of his character, proving that greatness does not begin with power or fame, but with self-questioning, moral grounding, and the courage to learn from weakness. Gandhi's time in South Africa marked the true awakening of his conscience and purpose. Shortly after his arrival in 1893, he experienced the brutal reality of racial discrimination when he was forcibly thrown out of a first-class train compartment, despite holding a valid ticket. That single moment of humiliation shook him deeply. But instead of responding with anger or revenge, Gandhi chose reflection. He began to understand that injustice was not a personal insult, but a system designed to crush human dignity. As he lived among Indian laborers facing daily abuse, unfair laws, and social exclusion, Gandhi slowly transformed from a struggling lawyer into a determined leader. He organized peaceful protests, challenged discriminatory legislation, and encouraged Indians to stand firm without violence. During these years, Gandhi developed the philosophy of a powerful idea rooted in truth, moral resistance, and non-cooperation with evil. He believed that suffering willingly endured for a just cause could awaken the conscience of the oppressor. This belief was tested repeatedly as Gandhi and his followers were arrested, beaten, and imprisoned. Yet each act of cruelty only strengthened their resolve and attracted international attention. Gandhi's leadership was not loud or forceful. It was calm, disciplined, and deeply moral, earning him respect even from his adversaries. By the time he left South Africa in 1915, Gandhi was no longer an ordinary man seeking purpose. He had discovered a new way to fight injustice, one that rejected hatred and relied instead on courage, patience, and truth. South Africa had transformed Gandhi, shaping him into a leader who understood that real power does not lie in violence, but in the unbreakable strength of the human spirit.
When Gandhi returned to India in 1915, he came back not as a politician seeking power, but as a servant of the people. He chose to dress like the poorest Indians, live simply, and walk among villagers whose voices had long been ignored. Traveling across the country, Gandhi listened carefully to farmers, laborers, and workers suffering under British colonial rule, heavy taxes, and social injustice. These journeys helped him understand the real pain of India and shaped his approach to leadership. Instead of commanding from above, he led from within, uniting people through empathy and shared sacrifice. Gandhi urged Indians to reject British authority peacefully through the non-cooperation movement, encouraging the boycott of foreign goods, courts, schools, and titles. He promoted self-reliance by reviving hand-spun cloth, turning the spinning wheel into a symbol of dignity and resistance. Millions responded, finding courage in his calm determination. For the first time, people from different religions, regions, and classes stood together against colonial power. The British government, alarmed by the growing unity, responded with arrests and repression. Yet Gandhi repeatedly insisted on nonviolence, even when provoked. He believed that freedom achieved through hatred would only plant the seeds of future conflict. Under his guidance, resistance became a moral force rather than a violent uprising. By transforming everyday actions into acts of defiance, Gandhi reshaped India's freedom struggle into a mass movement driven by conscience. This phase marked the moment when Gandhi became the voice of an entire nation, proving that unity, discipline, and peaceful resistance could challenge even the most powerful empire without destroying the soul of the people. In 1930, Gandhi launched one of the most powerful acts of civil disobedience in modern history through what came to be known as the Salt March. The British had imposed a harsh monopoly on salt, a basic necessity of life, forcing even the poorest Indians to buy it at an unfair price. Gandhi understood that salt touched every household, rich or poor, and by challenging this law, he could unite the entire nation in peaceful resistance. At the age of 60, he began a 240-mile march from his ashram to the Arabian Sea, walking day after day under the open sky. As he moved from village to village, crowds grew larger, inspired not by force, but by his quiet determination. When Gandhi finally reached the sea and lifted a small handful of salt, he had broken the law and shaken the authority of the British Empire. That simple act ignited mass protests across India. People openly made salt, boycotted British goods, and faced arrest without fear. The British responded with violence, beating peaceful protesters and filling prisons. But the world was watching. Images of unarmed Indians being attacked for demanding a basic right exposed the moral weakness of colonial rule. Gandhi was arrested, yet the movement continued to grow, proving that ideas cannot be imprisoned. The Salt March transformed the freedom struggle into a global symbol of peaceful defiance, showing that even the smallest act, when rooted in justice and courage, can challenge the mightiest powers. It was a turning point that proved nonviolence was not only a moral choice, but a force capable of changing history.
Gandhi's commitment to nonviolence demanded immense personal sacrifice, and the years that followed the Salt March tested his body, spirit, and resolve. He was arrested multiple times and spent long periods in British prisons, enduring harsh conditions without complaint. For Gandhi, imprisonment was not a punishment but a continuation of his struggle, a way to expose injustice through patience and moral strength. During these years, he undertook several hunger strikes, not to pressure the British alone, but to awaken the conscience of his own people. These fasts were acts of deep self-discipline, meant to stop violence, promote unity, and remind Indians of the ethical foundations of their movement. Each hunger strike placed his life at risk, drawing worldwide attention and forcing both supporters and opponents to reflect on their actions. Despite his frail body, Gandhi's influence only grew stronger. The British authorities found themselves unable to break his spirit. While millions of Indians drew inspiration from his suffering, he repeatedly emphasized that freedom achieved through hatred would only replace one form of oppression with another. Even when communal tensions rose and violence threatened to divide the nation, Gandhi remained steadfast in his belief that peace was essential for lasting independence. These years of sacrifice revealed the true cost of nonviolence, not ease or comfort, but courage, endurance, and moral clarity. Gandhi's willingness to suffer for truth transformed the struggle for independence into a movement of conscience, proving that real strength lies not in the ability to dominate, but in the courage to endure for what is right. In 1947, India finally achieved the long-sought dream of independence, ending nearly 2 centuries of British colonial rule. Yet, freedom came at a devastating cost. The subcontinent was divided into India and Pakistan, triggering widespread communal violence, displacement, and suffering. Gandhi, who had spent decades preaching unity and nonviolence, walked tirelessly through riot-torn Biakis, pleading with people to lay down their arms and embrace peace. His efforts could not prevent all bloodshed, but his presence reminded millions that moral courage must guide freedom. Tragically, just months after independence, Gandhi's life was cut short when he was assassinated in 1948. By a man who opposed his commitment to reconciliation. His death shocked the world, but it could not erase the principles he had lived by. Gandhi's legacy endures not in monuments or titles, but in the ideas he championed: truth, nonviolence, and the transformative power of conscience. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela drew inspiration from his methods, proving that his philosophy transcended borders and generations. Today, Gandhi stands as a symbol of the belief that one individual, guided by moral clarity and courage, can inspire a nation and influence the world. His life teaches that strength is not measured by force or weaponry, but by the unwavering commitment to justice, compassion, and humanity. In a world still riddled with conflict and oppression, Gandhi's message remains a beacon, showing that peace, patience, and principled action are among the most powerful forces capable of reshaping history and touching hearts across the globe. Gandhi's story does not end with his death, for his life continues to speak across generations and continents. He proved that true power does not lie in armies, weapons, or domination, but in the courage to stand by truth, even in the face of immense suffering. His philosophy of nonviolence inspired movements for freedom and justice worldwide, from Martin Luther King Jr.'s fight for civil rights in America to Nelson Mandela's struggle against apartheid in South Africa. Gandhi showed that ordinary individuals, when guided by conscience and moral conviction, can reshape history and awaken the world to justice. His life reminds us that change is not achieved through hatred, revenge, or force, but through patience, compassion, and unwavering commitment to what is right. In a world still divided by conflict and inequality, Gandhi's message remains as relevant as ever: that peace, truth, and humanity are the most powerful weapons we possess. As we reflect on his journey, we are challenged to ask ourselves, can we face injustice not with violence, but with courage? Can we, in our own small ways, live a life that changes the world for the better? Gandhi's answer resonates through times. We can, and it begins with the choices we make each day. Guided by truth, love, and the belief that one person's moral strength can inspire millions.